everybody. I've gotten some questions in the past about albums that have inspired me, influenced me, my music in general. And, the short answer is, boy, there's hundreds probably. But, I thought I would narrow it down to 10 that really are a huge influence. Now, I want to say at the top here that this is not my greatest albums or rankings or anything like that. These are just albums that have influenced me, my own music, and my own maybe musical philosophy over the years. And I think it's been pretty consistent that these 10 are there, but there's a lot more. But these 10 come to mind, and strangely enough, they're all fusion and uh, acoustic jazz albums, maybe from the 70s, except for one is from the 80s. So I'll tell you what they are. And again, not in any specific order or ranking. Uh, One is called Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy by Chick Corea and Return to Forever. Now, this is the first album that Return to Forever did when they kind of went electric. The first two Return to Forever albums, the first one simply called Return to Forever, and the second one, Light as a Feather. Those two albums were more done in Brazilian style, kind of fusing Brazilian music and Brazilian elements with jazz, and that featured Airto on percussion, drums, and also his wife Flora Purim on vocals. So that group, and see Joe Farrell on sax, Stanley Clark on bass. So those albums were in that style, but Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy was an entirely different thing. It went electric, and Chick Corea said that after hearing Mahavishnu, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and seeing them live, it sort of lit a fire under him to go electric, and he did. And he kept Stanley Clark, continued to partner with Stanley Clark on bass, but then originally he brought in Steve Gadd on drums and Mingo Lewis on percussion, along with Bill Connors on guitar. But when Steve Gadd said that he really wasn't available to tour, Chick wanted to re-record the album, this time without percussion. So he brought in Lenny White, and Lenny White was the drummer on that album. So the four were Chick Corea on keyboards, not synthesizers yet, but electric keyboards, Rhodes and clavinet and organ and things like that. And then Stanley Clark on upright and electric bass. Put a lot of effects on the upright bass. Lenny White on drums and Bill Connors on guitar. So yeah, big album. The next one I would say is certainly one of the most groundbreaking albums and sort of a game changer for the group Weather Report. It's called Mysterious Traveler from 1974, and this was the first album, studio album that they put out when they made the move from the New York area to the West Coast, and you can hear it in the music. It was a tremendous album, and it was also a transitional album in that the original bassist and co-founder Miroslav Vitus was being sort of phased out of the group, and they brought in Alfonso Johnson to play bass, and of course the group also included Wayne Shorter and Joe Zawinul, who were the co-founders of the group, and then they brought in different drummers through that period. Actually, a few different drummers on that album, including Ishmael Wilburn from Philadelphia. Mysterious Traveler was a just amazing album in terms of synthesis and world music, and it just had a really rich sound, and it was a real departure from the previous albums that Weather Report had done, and it was kind of, I think, the beginning of the sound that they became best known for. And the compositions were just absolutely great. And one track on that album, for me personally, has just been a I never tire of listening to it. Is a tune called Nubian Sundance that Joe Zawinul wrote. Another one comes from 1975, and this one is called Fusion 3 by Michael Urbaniak Fusion. Michael Urbaniak from Poland, a violinist, also played sax, great composer. He just passed recently, but Michael Urbaniak, just an amazing composer and violinist, and uh, kind of in that spirit of Jean-Luc Ponty and Jerry Goodman and those players. Uh, and so the he had hired a lot of studio musicians as well as some folks from his native Poland to perform on the album. And his wife at the time, Ursula Dudziak, I believe it's pronounced, um, was a vocalist, and she did amazing vocal scatting, wordless vocal on these albums, and sort of copped the with the same lines as the violin, and created this really interesting combination of violin and voice. It was a lot of fun. Um, the only album from the '80s on this list for me in these top 10 most influential for me personally was Pat Metheny Group's First Circle album from 1984. And just an amazing, amazing album. The first track on there was meant to be sort of a nudge, nudge, wink, wink to um, sort of growing up amongst high school bands and marching bands and things. So it was called Forward March, and it was kind of meant to be a joke. And and Pat Metheny has said since that we thought it was a good idea at the time. So, but if you skip that one, the rest of the album is just incredible, including the title track "First Circle" is just incredible, just an amazing piece of music. First Circle, 1984. 1971 has two albums that I wanted to mention. The first is, well, I should point out that they're not really true what I would call fusion albums, but the artists were certainly huge in fusion. One is an album called Piano Improvisations Volume 1 by Chick Corea. Um, this was probably the most influential album to me as a player. Um, it opened up a whole world for me in terms of approach to piano and improvisation. And again, as the title says, it's largely improvisations. And there are tunes that have evolved on that album that have been re-recorded and developed as tunes in the Chick Corea repertoire, and were recorded with groups and stuff. But most of this album is improvised, and it's on the ECM label, very famous for um, improvisational musicians. And yeah, Volume One, Piano Improvisations Volume One, Chick Corea. And in the same year, an album came out was by Mahavishnu John McLaughlin called My Goals Beyond. Now, there's two different sides to the album, as was with every album, but the first side really was just acoustic um, guitar and playing duets with himself, but and sometimes just solo guitar, and just amazingly beautiful searching for in the moment, And again, some of these tunes were developed further and played with a group. On the flip side of the album is um, he plays with other musicians, and some of them were from the Miles Davis lineup of the late '60s, early '70s, and then folks that would wind up becoming members of his first incarnation of the Mahavishnu Orchestra. So yeah, Michael's beyond amazing. Um, and as a piano player, um, his guitar phrasing was a huge influence on me. I was surprised that, it affected me that way. And I still take that approach sometimes when I play and improvise. It's like I think maybe I'm a frustrated guitar player. But yeah, incredible. Um, Another album that was a completely different from those two that I just mentioned was a 1975 recording by the new Tony Williams Lifetime called Believe It. And this was the first time that I heard Alan Holdsworth. And Alan Holdsworth, of course, rewrote the approach to guitar and for a lot of people. His influence is wide, far and wide. And when I first heard this, I literally recall myself stepping away from the speakers. What's going on here? I've never heard guitar like this. Um, it was incredible. It was absolutely amazing to hear the phrasing, and I just didn't think guitar could create that sound. And then, of course, then I went down the Alan Holdsworth rabbit hole and really listened to all kinds of stuff. But that was the first time I had heard it. And again, 1975, and that was called Believe It. Another album from 75 was another Weather Report album called Tailspinnin'. And Tailspinnin' was, uh, I think, when Weather Report had hit a period compositionally that really, if Mysterious Traveler from the year before had nudged them into a new area, this solidified it. This album solidified it. It was compositionally incredible. And this one, philosophically, for me, it remains influential to me because it's the spirit of surprising yourself. There are things I hear on that album that it's like, wow, I totally didn't expect that. I did not hear that coming. Why? How did he think of that? How did they come up with that little twist and turn? And I like to do that when I write. I like to throw in the unexpected, mainly to surprise myself. Okay, I'm writing something and it's like, well, it could go here, but I don't want to go there because that's, 95% of the people think that is where it's going to go. But what can I do that's not there? Something that just really is unexpected. And that spirit, that sort of always wanting to surprise. Really, I drew that philosophy, I think, from this particular album. It's a special record, Tailspin in 1975 Weather Report. In 1974, Herbie Hancock was just coming off the success of the Headhunters album. Um, and he basically had the same group, except for Harvey Mason had left. The drummer Harvey Mason had left and was replaced by Mike Clark. And the album was called Thrust, 1974. Four compositions, only four tunes on it, so they're long, sort of extended jams. And it's just absolutely brilliant. Grooves, it's funky, it's soulful, and the playing, the pockets, the grooves are just otherworldly. I mean, all four tracks just do it. I mean, they really are. And to this day, I mean, Herbie's phrasing and that left hand and the comping and the tension and the release it's just Herbie at his absolute best, the band at its absolute best, and what can I say? It's a powerful, powerful album. Um, and I think there's one more here. Yeah, yeah. I didn't mention a Mahavishnu Orchestra album from. It was the second studio album by Mahavishnu. in 1973. I think it was released. Well, it was released in 73. I think it might have been recorded in 72, but released in 73. And it's arguably their most famous record. It's called Birds of Fire. And this is with the original lineup. So it's Mahavishnu, John McLaughlin on guitar, of course, Rick Laird on bass, Billy Cobham on drums, Jerry Goodman on violin, and of course, the great Jan Hammer on keyboards. Of course, a lot of people know Jan Hammer from doing the soundtrack work for and writing the theme to the TV show Miami Vice. But of course, he has a long career himself. This album was a shock. Well, the album before it, of course, Intermounting Flame, just tipped the world off its axis from a full force, electric, in your face fusing of rock and jazz and Indian music. It was just amazing. But they really fine tuned it here on Birds of Fire, and the compositions were just tremendous. So anyway, that's it. If you asked me tomorrow, I could probably come up with another 10. But those are kind of albums that a lot of them early in my development as a player, and even as a composer, these had just massive impact, influence, and inspiration on me, and I'm not alone. I could many of my friends who are musicians and people I've spoken with, articles I've read from other famous musicians have said, "Wow, these albums, this one inspired me, that one." So I'm not alone. Anyway, just thought I'd share that as I was asked that recently, and I figured, well, maybe I'll just do a quick video here, not so quick, but at least trying to explain these 10 albums. But again, these are not ranked in any way. They're not. I'm not saying they're the best, because that's all subjective, and we all have our things. But these were ones that just had an impact on me. But there's many others: classical music and ethnic music and world music and straight ahead jazz and rock and pop and R&B and you name it. I mean, everybody from Tchaikovsky to Stevie Wonder and a million people, the Beatles, and a million people in between have had an impact. But these 10 are ones that come to mind right now. So I thought I'd share it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and see you again soon.